Hi, I'm Janelle. This is a bit of a portfolio workshop. I'm going to take you through a couple of tips and tricks on how to get your portfolio started or up to speed. I'm a graphic design and photography graduate, so I've been there, I've done portfolios, I've struggled with it, I know what it's like. I've also taught web design and UX UI as well. I volunteer with a couple of the creative organizations in Auckland, and I'm pretty passionate about our creative community. Today we're going to cover what a portfolio is, why it's important to have one, how you can pick your best work, and then what sort of format to use to display your work. Essentially, a portfolio is a visual representation of you as a creative. It represents you and your creative skills, shows your work, and highlights your strength and your eye for detail. Generally speaking, you're going to want one if you want to apply for a course or an internship. Most creative careers ask you to submit one. And then they're also quite handy as well if you want to get some freelance work. I also think they're really handy because it actually encourages you to finish your work properly and present it to a really, really nice standard. And they're also good fun to look back on a couple of years later and sort of see how far you've come over time. I came up with a little bit of a mnemonic to help me remember it. So personality, you're going to be thinking about your personality, the branding, the work that you want to do, where you kind of want to go. Your objectives for your portfolio. So why you're making this particular one, who's going to be looking at it, what sort of message do you want to convey in this particular portfolio. You're going to review your work, go through it really critically and ruthlessly, so you've only just got your best work in there at the end. Your text is going to add a bit of context, a bit of a background, some interesting information to your project. You want to make sure that the focus is on the work that you want to do in the future, the work that you enjoy. You're going to look at the outcome, whether it's on Wix, WordPress, Squarespace, Adobe Portfolio, digital PDF. You want your layout to really flow and make logical sense and just look really clean and nice. You're going to inspect it for any errors, any grammar mistakes, spelling, etc. And you want to get a couple of outside opinions on it. You want to sort of see what other people get from it when they have a look at it. So in terms of your personality, you're going to be thinking about the work that you want to do in the future. So what work do you enjoy? Is it web design, graphic design, illustration, etc.? And then sort of thinking about how that ties into you and your personality. This is a couple of tasks here for this one. You really want to think about writing a brief or an assignment. Gives you something to start with, an easy way to sort of figure out where you're going. But first up, you want to come up with a niche. You really want to narrow down in the field. So say if you want to do web design, you probably want to get a bit more specific. Something like maybe you want to do websites for solo creative entrepreneurs who want to sell their products online through e-commerce stores. You know, get quite narrow on that one and get quite specific. You can always expand it later. Then you want to do some research on your ideal clients. Where do those guys hang out? What do they spend their money on? All that sort of stuff. Come up with a couple of keywords that you can put into your branding. So don't forget, you don't have to create your branding if you're not that comfortable with it. You can buddy up with someone to help you out, or you can pay somebody to help you out with it. What are the objectives of this specific portfolio? So why are you making this one? What do you want to gain from it? Who is going to be your target audience this time? Who's going to be looking at it? What work is going to go in it? Is it going to be just web design work? Is it going to be web illustration, graphics? Thinking about that job description or the course that you're going into, or whatever that end goal is. Think about what's most relevant. And then how long is your work going to be relevant, and therefore how long are you going to need to update it? Every 2 weeks, every 2 months, every 2 years. So again, defining the objectives really clearly here. What are your current goals for this portfolio? Knowing that target audience, really understanding them, and then deciding on what types of work to include. So you need to know whether you're going to put in everything, or just the graphic design, or the web design, or the illustration, etc. Thinking about that work, what's going to be the best display method? If you're doing illustration work, it's going to be a little bit different than if you're doing UX, UI, or web, or whatever. Next, you want to review your work, so finding those pieces that are appropriate, pulling them all together, asking yourself some really tough questions about those. Just making sure that it is still your best work, that you're really proud of it still. So gather all of your work together, pick about 5 to 10 of your best pieces, and have a bit of a review of them. You might only have 2 or 3, or you might have 15, but we're sort of aiming for about 5 to 10 pieces. You need to cut anything that doesn't work anymore. If it's too old, if it's not relevant, you just want to turf that. If you can update it a little bit and tweak it, yeah, but as long as it's still really, really good work. You want just the high quality stuff. you're better off to have 3 really strong pieces than 5 that are just kind of average, because you may also be judged by the worst piece in your portfolio. So if there's a project that you really hate or that you didn't enjoy working on, do not put that in unless you can adapt it a little bit. When it comes to text, you just want to keep it really interesting, really succinct. Generally, you're going to talk about the title, the problem, the client, and how you sort of solved that problem and what your role was in it. So you just want a paragraph or 2. Keep it quite short, but give enough context and kind of make it interesting if you can. Tell a bit of a story. Please don't lie or include anything that you can't talk about confidently. You don't want to get into an interview and they ask you about this particular project and you're not able to talk about it. When you're looking at the focus, does this piece scream web designer for sole creative entrepreneurs that sell their products on e-commerce, or does it say more of corporate web design firm or boutique graphic designer or illustrator? So look at it objectively, thinking about those pieces. Are they cohesive? Do they work together? Is it the work that you want to do? Don't forget that you can now always remove pieces. If you've got too much illustration and it's screaming illustrator, then take some of those pieces out. Or can you repurpose those illustration pieces to fit into the work you want to do in the future? Maybe they can go into a web design page. They're part of the design for the website. Who knows? And do you have enough work in that niche? If you don't, maybe you need to create a few personal projects. Employers love personal projects, so don't be afraid to sort of make a couple of things up, or, rebrand another company, or take something and put a bit of a spin on it. You want to look at all these pieces as a body of work and see what jumps out at you. Thinking about your outcome, generally speaking, printed is a little bit too much effort these days. It costs a bit too much to update. Just printing it in general takes a lot of time and effort. So you kind of want to be looking at a PDF or a website. When it comes down to it, you need to consider the work that you have. Can it all be included digitally? Can it all be put in a PDF or on a website? I think the other key thing is whether you're happy to have your work public or if you want it private. If you're happy for everything to be public, throw it online. If you want a little bit more control over that privacy, look into platforms that have password protection, or maybe look into a PDF instead. Keeping in mind, if you've got any NDAs or clients or work that they've said, can you please not put it online? That's something you really need to consider right now. Thinking about how you'll access it in an interview. Will you have a tablet or an iPad on you? Will you have Wi-Fi? How can you kind of take that work with you, making sure you've got a way to display it regardless. If you do have any physical or printed pieces, it's really great to take those into the interview, as long as they are relevant. Thinking about your layout, you want to have a little bit of thought into the grid, which platform is the most appropriate, considering your order and flow. So you want to make sure that it all works really cohesively together, that it sits well next to each other. It's accessible and user-friendly as well as a big one. So when deciding on your outcome or your layout, you want to think about whether you can, use Adobe InDesign to create a PDF, or can you learn it? Can you design a website? Can you use Squarespace or WordPress or Wix, or are you going to pay someone to do it for you? Thinking about including your CV in the first page and your contact details, obviously, I would almost do your CV on the first page and your contact details on the last page, as well as in your CV. And then you really want to put your best pieces at the start, the middle, and the end. If you've only got 2, put it at the start and the end. You just want to make a really good first and last impression. Have a really good inspection of it. Check for any typos, spelling, grammar errors. Make sure your content makes sense. Does it read well? Does it all fit together? File size as well. If you're doing a PDF, you don't want a 75 gig PDF trying to go through emails. I always say check it, sleep on it, check it again, or at least walk away for an hour. Just check it, wait, step back, and then check it again. It's also good if you can get 3 other people to check it. That way you're just covering all your bases. And then every single time you update it as well, double check the whole thing. It's really easy to skip over typos. And just before you send it out as well, have a bit of an update and a flick through and just see where it's at. Another option is to also go through and pretend that you're an employer, objectively clicking the links and checking the usability and looking for typos and stuff. Generally speaking, typos and bad grammar are going to get you kicked off the list quite quickly. Seeking other opinions, so asking a couple of people what impression do they get, does it all make sense, then let them know who your target audience is, or ask them who they think your target audience is. Asking for any improvements can be quite hard sometimes. Not everyone wants to give you that feedback, but it's worth asking. Another employer or creative are really helpful to get their impressions. They sort of have that more objective viewpoint there. Go back and check with your brief. Did you meet in with everything? Is it appropriate for the target audience? Is it appropriate for the work you want to do? And then ask parents or grandparents or someone who's not that technologically savvy. Ask them to give it a go, see how they work with it. That's a really good test of your usability as somebody who's not really that familiar with technology. So a quick little recap. Essentially, your personality is your branding, who you are. Your objectives are why you're making this one particular portfolio. You want to review your work that's relevant. Choose it really critically. You want to make good text in there. You want to have concise explanatory paragraphs. Give that context. You want to make sure that the focus is on the work that you actually want to do, the work that you enjoy. Your outcome is going to be the best way that you're going to present it. You want your layout to be well designed, easy to use. In your inspection, you want to just check your spelling, your grammar, your images, everything. And then opinions, obviously that objective view there. So a rough list of those tasks. It's not all of them, but it's kind of the most important ones. So knowing who you are and writing that brief, identifying and designing for your particular target audience, and it's probably going to change, but for this one in particular, and choosing your best work. Don't just throw in the average stuff. Be really, really critical and just have the best ones. You want really succinct paragraphs, but also try and keep them interesting. Think about what you thought was quite interesting throughout the project. Making sure that the focus is on the work that you want to do. It's on your personality. It's on that branding that you're trying to put forward. Making sure that you've got an appropriate outcome or platform or website or whatever for your use and for your target audience. Making sure you've got a nice clean layout and a strong order, that your pieces are well displayed. Making sure that it's error-free, user-friendly, grandma can use it, super easy. And then asking for more than one, and then high-level opinions as well. So getting some really good objective feedback. So that's kind of all I've got for the day. I do have a couple of other little life tips in here that I think have been quite handy. Main one would be to start thinking about it early. It does take quite a while sometimes to try out different things, but internships are a really, really good way to try things out. Do more than one. Even volunteering as well and entering competitions, going to events and stuff, just trying to sort of talk to people and get the most information and figure out where you want to go. A statement of intent can also be really helpful. So say if you really love web design and graphic design, you want to do them both. It can be really handy to add that into your portfolio or your CV, sort of make them really aware that that was an intentional choice. You can add in a photo as well, but only if it's an appropriate professional one, making sure that you keep your quality really, really high, and obviously making more personal work. The more work you make, the better you're going to get, and the sooner it's going to, show rewards for you. I've also got a bit of a survey here. If you guys could give us a little bit of feedback, that would be really, really useful. It helps us to improve everything else in the future, and it lets us know what we did really well or not. So thank you very much for your time. Have a great day and get cracking on your portfolios.